Ooh. All right, guys, what's going on out there? We'll see if somebody pops in here. What we have is a rainy, dreary, gloomy, gray November Sunday, and as I always say, there's nothing that makes you feel like being a little bit nostalgic as a rainy Sunday and piling up on the bed with the radio, reading a bunch of comics and stuff, right? So I've been looking around on YouTube the last few days and stuff. Of course, it's Sunday and stuff, and wow, things have really slowed down on it. I don't know if it's been the holiday weekend or maybe just the people I'm subscribed to and the other channels I'm subscribed to, because of course I watch more than just YouTube videos and things like that. But it's really slowed down a whole lot. So maybe we'll just maybe it's just the maybe people are just getting busy. And of course, we're in the middle of daylight. Hey, morning, Dr. Silver Age. What's going on, guys? All right. People are piling up in here, man. So basically, I just figured I was sitting around here. I actually brought work home to do this weekend. I got a few things to do. I'm going to get a few phone calls this afternoon. And so last couple of days, I've actually been like, had a chance to go through some comics, finishing up some stuff. I've been catching up on Astro City. And then there's other things I have. It seems like there's a lot of dissatisfaction with a lot of newer comics coming out, and whenever I check out the Twitter and things like that, there seems to be arguments of like comics have always been political and this and that, and I just sort of like, nah, let's back up here. Let's back up here and talk about comics. Let's back up here and talk about the hobby. Yeah, I love Astro City, man. That's Dr. Silver Age talking to me, man. The Astro City stuff I actually have downstairs. It's the volume being put out by Vertigo right now. I think last night, I'm getting caught up on it. I'm reading from issue 23 up to, I think they're around 47. And I'm actually getting ready to quit the title, probably around 50, issue 50 and stuff, for various reasons and stuff, right? But it's been very uneven. Some stories are better than others, and it seems like when it comes to Astro City, if you've ever read it, we'll have two-part stories, three-part stories. Yeah. Twitter's the devil, man. Yeah, people are shocked. I've pushed Astro City on my channel for years. I've been there from the beginning. Um, I think the book has hit its 27th anniversary. Yeah. And I've been with Astro City from the beginning of it. I actually have the promotional poster that I was given by a comic book shop because I was one of the only people really pushing the first six issues that came out. I mean, I was right there getting them. Kurt Busiek writing it, Brent Anderson doing the art, but the Alex Ross covers and designs. These guys were in the '90s. These guys were like hot, fresh off of Marvels, And then Alex Ross had his Kingdom Come, Uncle Sam, his covers. Just he was hot, man. And I stuck with the book over the years, even when it was just the Dark Age. Hey, what's up, collector stuff? We got people coming in, man. But with Astro City, Kurt Busiek's had health problems over the years, and it's been from publisher to publisher. Wildstorm, Image, Homage, which are all still part of it. Now they're with Valiant, and so yeah, I'll be probably quitting that around issue 50, and I'll probably end up getting. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll back up and get what I missed and stuff. But it's been quite a journey with it. But like I said, the just to put it out there, the politics and creator behavior on Twitter, they just need to realize that they're running off fans. And Astro City is not a top-selling book. It's a quality book. The quality's been up and down since he's been with Vertigo. But getting back to what I was saying, it seems like the story arcs that he has, one or two of the longer story arcs that have lasted 2, 3 issues. I think he might have one that lasted 4. I can't remember uneven, but if he does a one-shot story, it's fantastic. Opinions are subjective. Get in there and read it. You might find a few things you want here and there. I actually had a few issues that were bland. It seems like Astro City, the characters age in real time, and it seems like the characters who are popping up in Astro City who are younger, those seem to be the dullest stories for real. Um, I can't remember the character's name, but she was supposed to be. She's like Doctor Strange, like but a young Doctor Strange. I like the one and done series stories myself. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, get in there and play around with Astro City. If you don't like one story, wait 5 minutes and jump on the next one. It's the story of a bunch of heroes in the city, from different perspectives and views and things like that. All right, so some of the other things I've been reading last night, I've got a variety of stuff here, guys. So moving on from Astro City and the shock of me quitting it, I have quite a few videos and stuff. It's amazing. But one of the things I've just finished reading is DK3. This is the box set. I was buying the hardback editions of them, collectible hardbacks. I was getting them for a discount, and then when number 9 came out, that came with the slipcase. So each issue ends up making this image of our Robin. Carrie Kelly's an awesome character, and we get this, all right? So I read DK3, Dark Knight Returns. If you've read comic books at all, hey, what's up, Nerd Vision? So if you read comic books at all, I don't need to go into what Dark Knight Returns was back in the 80s, okay? And then Dark Knight Returns had a sequel, Dark Knight Strikes Back, or DK2 there and stuff like that. And the interesting thing about that is that it upset a lot of people, and I knew what Miller was doing. It came out in 2001, and honestly, I felt that anything that in that book, the Atom parts, the Flash parts, them going around, seeing where the other characters are in this. Oh, it is wonderful. I really enjoy it. I really love this set. I'm actually going to try to find something to encase this is, because it's white and I don't want it to age. I don't want it to yellow. So there's a few things I'm going to try to do to preserve that. But Dark Knight 2, I stuck in there. I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed anything that did not have anything to do with Batman in it, which was amazing. I don't know if that was by design of Frank Miller or not. But then we had Dark Knight 3 come out, and I remember eyes rolling and everybody going, oh no. And we had Brian Azzarello coming on there with Frank Miller, Andy Kubert doing the art, and Klaus Johnson from the original DK3, Dark Knight Returns, got to jump in there. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, it's a safe story. It's one of the things that didn't blow me away when I read it, but it was just enough I wanted to finish it. And I think it was sort of monotone, is the way I'd put it. Some great stuff with the Atom in there and some Flash. He plays around with Kandor. It's a bit more Superman-centric. Superman and Wonder Woman's daughter is in it and stuff. But it's like a safe story. It's almost like DK2, they don't want to admit that it was a mess, so they were like, let's do something safe. So when you read this, it's not going to blow you away, but you're not going to walk away wanting more. It's very, very cool. Like I said, just a safe read. It had a few little social commentaries in there, but it's one of those things where it wasn't a big deal. They said what they had to say. The characters did something. For example, when Kandor, it's a religious cult in Kandor that goes nuts, and they're sitting there telling the Earth that we're here and you're going to serve and all this stuff. Everybody's in their phones, and nobody's paying attention. So they send some Kandorians up there, they're Kryptonian up there, and they blow up a bunch of satellites, and we see everybody have to look up from their phones. So it's little commentaries like that. Had a little bit of Trump stuff in there, had a little bit of the news in there and things like that, to keep that feel. So it's a safe read, okay? So I've enjoyed it. I'm glad I have it. The slipcase is awesome, and I'm going to try to preserve it and stuff, right? Now this one right here, not a lot to say about this, but it's time. It's time. The internet has grown since I've was given this one book, okay? And that'll make sense in a minute, okay? I've met people over the years who told me they could speak French, and basically I think it amounted to high school French. And they were having problems with the common speech in here that, and they were trying to tell me that when you read French or speak French, you have to talk in male-female voice and stuff like that, right? But back in, I think it was 2000, I had a coworker. She and her husband went to England. Her husband's family is originally from England, and I think he grew up in England when he was a kid and came over here. He has no accent from England at all. He has no British accent. So then whenever they visited family and they toured around Europe and they got to France, they got to, France. And she was thinking about me because I liked comic books back in the day. And, she knew me from work. And people figured it out. This is before I really put it out there. They picked up on it. So she goes around and she's looking for comic books in, I don't know, some market or something in France. And she was surprised to find that there were men in black trench coats and business suits and slicked back hair, looked like they combed their hair with butter, and all that stuff, sitting there. And this art form is taken very serious in France, apparently, right? So she ended up just picking up something that is just a treat for me. She was expecting to see a bunch of kids, the stigma on comics and stuff. So she gets this, and I'm not even going to try to read it. But what this is just fantastic because I can follow the story by the pictures in it, because this is actually from France, delivered to me. And basically, it's like a hard-boiled detective from France who has dreams of evil clowns and skulls. And apparently, from what I can tell, he gets hired by a case. This apparently is a big deal in France. I think this person who does this is just fantastic. It's a very simple cartoonist style. It's very stylized. And the little things where I've never been to France, like that phone right there and stuff like that, gives it a film noir feel. Is what it feels like, right? And of course, we have this girlfriend, and I just love the tone where this is, authentic French. I think this takes place in maybe the 40s or something like that. The way the shape of the cars and the older phones and things like that. Always smoking his pipe, a lot of exposition. So, but the problem is like I said, it is in French. So what I've done over the years is I've taken the title and I've tried to figure out the author and things like that, and I've typed them into Google and other search engines over the years, seeing if I can find a translator and stuff. Right? Didn't have a lot of authentic luck. I got just enough on a few phrases and stuff in here where I could kind of follow the story, but it was gibberish. It ended up being gibberish and stuff, right? So we're going to give it another shot and play around. But this thing is just fantastic. There's a mood. It has an atmosphere to it. He ends up wearing the clown nose, so whatever this fear of clowns, whatever that clown is that's haunting him in his dreams, he ends up like owning it in the real world, So maybe this thing takes place in the '60s. I'm not sure. We got black trench coat guys, and he's getting taxis. He's walking around in the rain. Just fantastic stuff. Following people, guns and pipes. So just fantastic. I kind of wonder if they ever made a movie of this or a cartoon. Would they get the guy that Rowan Atkinson, who plays Mr. Bean? That could be this guy. So it's fantastic. And if I ever drew a comic book, I would probably rip off this guy's style all the way, man. I mean, he's got the figures down right in a cartoony style, and then he like makes up for it with the backgrounds and the world that he builds of France and stuff and the coloring. Very moody, very artistic, very cool, very cool. All right, we'll set that there. Okay, are you guys still with me? Nobody's left. This is awesome. I'm gaining people, right? And then I found something, right? I was in high school. I graduated in 1991, of course. And there were a lot of things going on. DC had been picking up. Hey, Brian Space Boy is here, 227. All right. But I found an old thing of Marvel, and there was a lot of things going on. You had the Infinity Gauntlet come out. You had DC just knocking it out of the park left and right after Crisis and Dark Knight and Watchmen, and there's this momentum going. John Byrne kind of finished up at DC, and right before he came back to Marvel, he was still working on some Superman stuff, some things at DC, and he stuck his toe into Starbrand, Marvel's New Universe book, where he was doing it bi-monthly. And then when he came back, he jumped on like She-Hulk and Namor and West Coast Avengers and stuff. And this is the Marvel Age of 1990 that was showing all these new books that were coming out. There was like a mini launch going into the 90s. Now, personally, people talk about Deadpool and Rob Liefeld coming to Marvel and New Mutants and things like that. And I've always held that Cable is a character that is really overlooked for many reasons. A lot of people, Rob Liefeld has his fans. People don't like Rob Liefeld and things like that. He brought in the big guns. He made things big, exaggerated and stuff. And Cable actually, to me, ushered in the 90s. Cable was that character that popped up that ushered in the 90s. Okay, I mean, I'll give credit where credit's due. But, we all say Rob Liefeld. We need to remember Louise Simonson came out there, and she's the one that funneled that stuff and made it into a coherent story. We'll just leave it at that. Deadpool was a throwaway character when he came out. So I always kind of laugh about how in the mid to late 90s, how he started really taking off. And deservedly so. All Joe Kelly and Ed McGuinness and all those guys that worked on Deadpool and reshaped him and turned him into Ambush Bug. Just sort of, it's fantastic. I love the Deadpool movie, right? But this right here, this was really cool to keep stuff like this over the years, and it kind of makes me laugh about all the number ones I still have. New Warriors had showed up during Acts of Vengeance in Thor, ended up getting their own book. RoboCop got licensed, and we had a RoboCop #1 come out. The Spider-Man front and center is because Todd McFarlane got his Spider-Man book that he wrote and drew. Hey, what's up, Tim? Headed to band practice and catching you on the way. I'm stopped right now, so not texting, driving. Cool, Carl on base 181, man. All right, man, throw up some videos on YouTube of your band, man. Cayman X is here. All right, we get all kinds of people coming in. All right, so sticking to this, Todd McFarlane's #1 came out. Yeah, cool, man. Cool, Carl, man. Yeah, comment, man. Be careful driving and stuff, man. Completely understand. Cool, man. It was great to hear from you. So anyway, we had Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man. How many times can I say that? Where he wrote and drew it. And a lot of people are like, when you go back to that #1, I think sold like 1 million copies, had a bunch of covers. Todd McFarlane was having fun with the covers where he would hide a spider on there. He would like sign his name and have a number, and that number would tell you how many spiders he'd hit on the cover of the books and stuff. A lot of fun, but a lot of people, are real harsh about his writing, and it deservedly so, don't get me wrong. But what people don't realize is if you go back and you read the editorials and the letter pages in some of those early issues of Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man, he was Crumble Point. Hey, Crumble Point, what's up, brother? I agree about Cable. I had an old X-Men encyclopedia. When Cable appeared, you knew something was different. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff for Rob Liefeld. A lot of that stuff that Rob Liefeld did with Cable and his designs and stuff, if you go back and look at the New Gods, specifically the Forever People and stuff, he pulled a lot from Kirby, intentionally or unintentionally. But anyway, if you go back and read the editorials and the letters page and things like that, Todd McFarlane was begging for people to tell him, give him advice on writing. What's he doing wrong? What could he do better? He was begging for people to tell him how to write, basically, right? Now, it's kind of cool that he acknowledged it and he did those things, but it also kind of showed that he wasn't ready if he's begging for advice and stuff. Maybe he was getting the fans in there and stuff, right? So I'm real forgiving about that series that Todd McFarlane did. I enjoyed the first arc where he was trying something new. I think the first 4 or 5 issues or something like that all took place in one night. He did a story where he tried to pace it where it actually took your point of view. You were right there in the action, and the story actually took place as close to real time as he could do it, which I thought was pretty cool. All right, and then, I got the New Warriors #1. Everybody probably has their Todd McFarlane Spider-Man #1. Ghost Rider #1 came back. It came out back with Danny Rand, I think was his name. And, oh man, Javier Salters and the art that was going on this, somebody could finally draw a skull. Of course, this is Byrne and stuff, right? Oh man, I stuck with this for like the first 5 or 6 issues, man, and it was just fantastic. It was a good series. Just a good series, man. And then, of course, we had the Guardians of the Galaxy by Jim Valentino, right? And it was just really cool to see those. He did some great stuff updating it. He did a fantastic job of the Guardians of the Future, and he brought in the Punishers. What your favorite Cayman X is what's your favorite 90s artist? Oh, wow. My favorite 90s artist. Now, in the 90s, man, we had so many people popping up in Image and so many people rising. Mike Mignola really came into his own on Hellboy, where he finally, it's like he completed his style that I'd watched him doing in the 80s, where he kept popping up. Favorite 90s artist? See, I want to say it's probably like Alex Ross, but that's too easy. And I've always had a thing for George Perez. They've never really gone anything. But I would say the person who probably came up in the 90s, Frank Miller even ended up taking up for him stuff. But if I had to say who was my favorite artist just for the 90s, I'm going to go with Mike Mignola. He did some great stuff in there, man. And it wasn't just his Hellboy stuff. He did Fafford and the Grey Mouser with Howard Chaykin through Dark Horse. He did a few good covers. He did the Doom that came to Gotham. I think he wrote that more than drew it. And then he also did this 2-issue miniseries that he helped, I think he co-plotted and drew. And it was Batman, Hellboy, and Starband. So he just seemed to be in the right spot at the right time for a lot of stuff. Now, that could change in 5 minutes. I could be sitting here and just blurt out an artist's name all of a sudden that I think should have got some, some better praise. But yeah, I mean, a lot of artists that came out in the 90s really were doing the styles of Image, in order to get their books sold and stuff. So, Brett Booth is somebody you can back and look at his stuff. I would have loved to see him do more Spider-Man. I think he did a Backlash Spider-Man miniseries, little one-shot or crossover or something like that. I mean, we're going way back now. And when I saw this Image guy drawing Spider-Man, I was just like, oh yeah. So yeah, a lot of people came and went during that time. It was fantastic, right? All right. So yeah, it's kind of cool to see this Marvel Age. And of course, it was just really cool to see this. And of course, I don't want to forget Namor. Namor got his own title again, and this time, I think it was Namor the Submariner. And when John Byrne came back to Marvel in late '80s, early '90s, it was so cool what he did. And a lot of people don't pick up on it and stuff, but he took a lot of B characters and then he like went back into the history. He pulled from the continuity and history of Marvel underused characters and stuff, right? He brought in the Griffin into Namor. He brought in the Invaders stories that came in there. He brought back Master Man and Warrior Woman and stuff. Then over in She-Hulk, She-Hulk, of course, ended up being, you were reading the comic book that you would read of She-Hulk if you lived in the actual Marvel universe, right? In issue 50, you find out that, bad connection. Issue 50, you see She-Hulk walking around the Marvel offices talking about John Burns leaving and all this stuff, right? And you find that out, but he played around with tropes of the comic books and brought up B-list characters big time when he came back. The Exhumed, uh, Machismo, and just my favorite. Oh my God, he brought back one of my favorite Marvel '50s monsters. Can't think of his name now, but yeah, he did a lot of stuff there. I had a bad connection there for a minute, guys. It broke my concentration. Okay, sorry about that. So I'll probably maybe blurring out some other stuff, right? And then one of the things that I have played around with doing my own comic. I've never thought about getting published. It's just sort of like a creative experiment or just to play around. I've done art and stuff like that. I've actually had a few cartoons published in my early 20s in local papers and stuff. Nothing big time or anything like that. And what I found is I never read an issue. I kind of heard about it. I'd seen Harvey Pekar maybe one time on David Letterman in the '80s when I was in high school. Couldn't sleep one night or something like that. But I never really delved into American Splendor until this movie came out. And I think it came out in 2002. This says 2003, but I swear I remember maybe it's when the DVD came out. I don't know. But American Splendor, right? And this is about Harvey Pekar. This was an underground comic that started in the '70s. This dude hung out with Robert Crumb in the '60s. He's from Cleveland, Ohio, and it's autobiographical comics. Look in the real world. He said, life has a lot. Real life is complicated, and he wanted to leave his mark and stuff, right? So when I was playing around doing my own comic and doing a few things here and there and stuff like that, I was kind of crushed because like I ended up doing Harvey Pekar without ever reading Harvey Pekar. You know what I mean? It was the same, but it was different. You know what I mean? Even this DVD, this American Splendor, the movie. I got some books here I'll show you, but the movie. Uh, have you read Bob Haney's Sage of the Super Sons? If it's I don't know. I have a bunch of World Finest from the '70s, the Bronze Age and stuff with the Super Sons. I want to say Bob Haney wrote those, but I may not be clear on what you're talking about. Is it a trade paperback or something else? So let me chime in there. But if it's some of the original Super Son stories from the '70s, I have the World's Finest with them in there. So, but even this came with like a mini comic called My Movie Year. And Harvey Pekar and his wife, and whoever the artist was, actually won an award because they did Our Cancer Year, the book. And he got, he won a few comic book awards for that and stuff. But this is just a fantastic story of Harvey Pekar. It actually takes some of the comics that he's done and put them in here. My favorite one, and it's because it's something I did when I was a kid, is that he has this monologue, which is basically a rose is a rose. I beloved Mark Bagley's work in the '90s. Yeah, New Trade. If it's the trade of the Super Sons, I've already read them I've been reading them since I was a kid and stuff, off and on in World's Finest and stuff. They were cool little stories. Super Sons. This was actually when you had Batman Junior and Superman Junior. Is basically what it was. They were teenage boys and stuff like that in the future. But get this, my favorite one is when he's talking about the telephone book, where he thought he had an unusual name, and he started looking in the phone book in 1960 because that's when he got his first phone, and he started seeing Harvey Pekars in there and Harvey J. Pekars and things like that, and then he wondered who these people were, and he felt attached to them, and he didn't know why. And it's just a fantastic. You can find it on YouTube, just the telephone talk. It's probably like a 3 or 4 minute clip on this, which is fantastic, but it's from the comic that Robert Crumb illustrated for him. Um, And so I ended up getting this for like maybe, I can't remember, $5. I'm so glad I do these videos because I can go back and see what I paid for this. But this is a collection of his independently drawn comic from the 70s throughout the 80s. It came out real sporadic. He ended up being on David Letterman, and he was such a character on David Letterman, he kept bringing him back until his big meltdown. And he collected jazz records. He would sit around with Robert Crumb in the 60s in Cleveland, Ohio. They became friends. According to the movie, they met at a yard sale or something where they were going through records. But he also did reviews on jazz records and stuff for magazines. But Harvey Pekar also, yeah, he was a VA file clerk for years. He supposedly would never take, he just wanted to retire. He wanted to get his scratch so he could retire. And he never took promotions or anything like that. He just stayed a file clerk. And he wrote about the people around him. And this is just fantastic stuff, man. He was friends with Robert Crumb, so Robert Crumb kind of helped him out and drew some of his first stories. These are people that actually show up in the movie that are in his life and stuff, right? And he talks about everything. I mean, there's some deep stuff. When he was younger, he had a lot to say. And then he got some other artists to jump in there. American Splinter is an amazing book. That's right, reader. That's right. And then, as you can see, there's some other artists that came in and did some other stuff with Harvey. And, he just kind of consistently worked, throughout there putting out this stuff. Some really good stuff in here. So I've really been enjoying this. I'm rereading some of this stuff. So, yeah, I never read an issue of American Splinter until after the movie, so. And, of course, before he died, he actually went a little bit mainstream. They put out some American Splinter. These are 2 collections of 2 4-issue miniseries. Oh yeah, those styles of comics are awesome, Raider. They really are, man. But here's Another Day and Another Dollar. 2 4-issue miniseries of a bunch of little short stories where they're about life. They're things that have happened to him. And I'm sure he adds that structure and drama to it to make it readable and stuff, right? I'm not going to say these are weak, but it's the point in his life where he's comfortable and things aren't as like they used to be. You follow what I'm saying? You know, he's a man in his 30s doing these, and probably a man in his 60s doing these. So they're still fantastic. Darwin Cook came in here and did one with them. David Lapham, Ty Templeton, a few other people. Finally came in here. Richard Corbin did one with them, and that's why I ended up getting this trade. And I have this miniseries somewhere. Richard Corbin and Harvey Pekar just working together blew my mind. Eddie Gilbert Hernandez. So yeah, they brought in some indie guys to come in here with the mainstream DC Vertigo. So it was just fantastic. So yeah, some of the stuff I'm reading or rereading with what's going on. And I went to the library. I have one more book I'm getting. This is actually the second time I got this, right? Now I usually have problems trying to read certain books like Who's Who, Official Handbook of the Marvel Universes, anything that kind of is supposed to categorize the characters, put them alphabetical, give you a biography on them, and things like that, their power levels and stuff. And these hardback encyclopedias that come out, especially with Marvel. Marvel gets Marvel's having enough problems as it is, but whenever I go through a Marvel encyclopedia, it's why I don't buy them. I'll go to the library and get them, or I'll borrow somebody's or something like that. Where I read so much stuff over the years and things like that, I sit there and I like end up picking it apart. Like that's wrong, and they had one damn job, and actually get going. But this I like, and I'm hoping that the binding on this doesn't come out. This is a library edition. This is the second time I've checked this out. DC Comics: A Visual History. The reason I like this one is that basically they start in the 30s and they go year by year through DC showing books and talking about them all the way up, and they even give you some of the ads that came out. This is the ad that came out in the 80s where you got to vote if Robin died or not. This is the actual advertisement with the numbers and stuff. And they talk about the events a little bit, but they show the books and stuff, right? I love stuff like this, right? And we're talking about the 1990s, so, we start out with 1990, and they do it through the books that came out, and as you can see, they talk about them a little bit. So this is just fantastic, and it's really wild for me to go through this and see all the stuff I have or have had. Love Who's Who. There was some great artwork included back in the day. Yeah, and I have all the Who's Who, the original ones that I got off the stands, and you can see my little pencil check marks in them and stuff for some reason with whatever I was doing. I think I was playing the Marvel Superheroes role playing game, and I would go through the official handbook of the Marvel Universe a little bit, and for some reason I would check those off, checking power levels off with the game. I was using those to try to play the game better when you can get people. But yeah, like I said, they pick out shots like this to kind of put you in the moment and things like that. Here's another one of the Watchmen, number 12. You know, big 2-page spreads and stuff, right? You obviously we're in the 80s. They have Dark Knight Returns in here and things like that. But like I say, if there was ever a year that defined me as a collector, it's probably when I was 13 and all this stuff, 12 and 13, and all this is coming out. These 2 pages, I think I have every one of these comics. They have the Watchmen. They talk about the Watchmen. Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, where Alan Moore wrote the last Silver Age Superman story after Crisis. History of the DC Universe, which is, I'm actually going to grab that right here in a minute and show it to you. John Byrne coming out with the Man of Steel. I don't have that Batman Anniversary. Yeah, I do. I have that Batman Anniversary Edition book. Justice Society and Legends and stuff right there. So yeah, for me, that's probably like my favorite year of comics just because I grew up in the middle of that, which was fantastic. So yeah, you go year by year. And speaking of Who's Who and stuff, here's 1985. I'm reading Silver Age Superboy comics. I wonder why they were I wonder why they ever made they have some trades of Silver Age Superboy out there. Yeah. A lot of off the top of my head, what they usually do is they make them sort of have a theme, like Kryptonite stories or something, kind of mixed in out there and stuff. Yeah, but here's first appearance. Here, you know, we're in 1985 now, and there's Crisis, first appearance of John Constantine. And this is a way to get your history. That Red Tornado, I bought that off the racks. That was Kurt Busiek wrote that before he was famous. Dr. Light, talking more about Crisis. Wonder Girl gets married. Justice Society, America versus Justice Society, good stuff. And you know, there's the Who's Who. You know, so you get a few pages of that. And you can go through and look at the books and stuff. It goes, like I said, it goes year by year. And like I was born in 1973. So these were some of the books that were in my house from my stepdad that he had in there. And I've actually had some of these over the years. Oh, Neil, that's a toe breaker. Oh, yeah, man. Oh, yeah, man. But it actually, what was really cool about this is that of all the Swamp Thing books they could have put in this from 1973, they put issue 2. And issue 2 was the one I read when I was like 4 or 5 years old with Bernie Wrightson bringing out the Unmen. And I think they've named him Cranium or something like that. The monster ended up getting a name, but the one that really stuck on me was the monster that they say it's a brain. To me, it looked like a human head with a face, and all it was one hand that it walked around on, like this. You see this? How creepy is that? So I just like going through stuff like that. It's simple. You don't have to think a whole lot. You can read the blurbs underneath them and stuff. Just go back and forth. You don't have to read it sequentially. You can pick out of a year. You can pick out a few months. You know, no biggie. And the other one I was going to show you, I apparently didn't bring back over here. The other stuff I've got laying around to read. Now, this is the trade. Okay, this was 2 issues. And of course, I got this for like $1. So I got this, but this was the history of the DC Universe, right? And there's a lot that could be said about what this was, but this was planned to be part of Crisis. I think Crisis on Infinite Earths was originally supposed to be like 10 issues or something. I have to go back and double check all that. But they were going to go ahead and do this, and this was the retelling of the DC Universe history going all the way back to the Caveman with Anthro and the first K-Boy and all that stuff, you know, and all the way up to the Legion and whatnot. And after they took after Crisis on Infinite Earth and they made one DC Earth, they had to retell the story of DC so everybody know what existed and what didn't. What's your favorite era of comics? Mine's... It looks like Cayman X has hers the 80s, 70s, and 50s. My favorite era of comics, I mean all-time favorite, where I think they did, it's the same thing as with Hollywood movies. Hey, Louie, what's up, man? And Dregs out there, 90s, baby. Somebody said 90s. Yeah, for me personally, it's kind of like movies. No, I love 80s movies. I love comics from the 80s and the 90s and stuff like that. But if I had like that whole situation Yeah, Bronze Age, Reader 1717. And that's what I'm getting at when it comes to like Hollywood movies and it comes to comic books and horror magazines and things like that. Yeah, it's who is this? Cruder Quotient number one said the history of the DC universe is included in the newsprint of Crisis, and it should be because the art is beautiful. I want to show some of it. But my favorite era for movies and that's right, it's Doctor Silver Age 60s and 70s. My favorite era is Bronze Age, man. I will grab some Bronze Age horror. I want some I mean the 70s Avengers, all that stuff that was going on. It's like comics kind of grew up a little bit and they were finding tricks to get beyond that comic code authority. And you had all these guys who were coming in from the late 60s into the 70s who grew up on comics and loved what they were doing. You had Steve Gerber coming out there writing, Vertigo's. To me, Steve Gerber is the original Neil Gaiman. Do we all like the era happened when we were kids? It could be. It had a lot to it, but I love 80s books, you know what I mean? Because that's when I grew up. A lot was going on. Watchmen, Dark Knight, the history was going on. I just showed you some of it and stuff. But really, I mean, I can be objective about it. Anything by Steve Gerber in the 70s, he wrote Mind Trips. He didn't write comics. Yeah, and things like that. And Hollywood movies, it was kind of like if you go back and you look at some of the stuff that came out in the 70s and stuff, it was gritty and felt too real sometimes. Taxi Driver, original Godfather. And then you had like fantastic stuff like Star Wars hit and stuff. Oh man, any Dustin Hoffman or Al Pacino movie, Saturday Night Fever, even. They have a movie about disco that is a freaking classic. You going to do some more movie and vinyl talk sometime? Sure, man. Sure, I'll do it. Yeah, I'm waiting for a computer to come in so I can actually do more. There's supposed to be a computer being sent to me. Gerber's Man Thing run in the 70s is amazing. Yeah, and right there was this, we had the Gerber's Man Thing. That was amazing, and the prose that he was doing, and Mike Plug and John Buscema coming in with some of that stuff that they were doing. And on the other side of it, you had Bernie Wrightson, man, Bernie Wrightson hitting us with a Lynn Wein. It is Lynn Wein. I got it confirmed. Lynn Wein, doing some of their Swamp Thing stuff that was coming in and everything like that. A lot of good stuff was going on. And of course, you had Kirby hitting DC with the Fourth World stuff and the Commandy and the OMAC. So yeah, my favorite era. If I could give up everything, if I could just have like everything from the Bronze Age and stuff, man. But I love it all. But yeah, Bronze Age is the one where I think. And sorry, Dr. Silver Age. I mean, we could talk about it and stuff like that, but I kind of think, without the Silver Age bringing Marvel up and bringing out Kirby and creating all these great characters and stuff, to me, I think the 70s was Marvel's finest hour, I mean, oh, man, it was good stuff, man. Love you, man. I love you, man. Okay. But getting back to this, the history of the DC Universe and stuff, this collects the 2 issues. And, here they are. I buy multiple copies so I can read them. Do you think we're repeating Watchmen, Dark Knight history as Mr. Miracle, White Knight, and Doomsday Clock? Hey, I love me some Bronze Age 2, brother. You got it. Okay, going back to that first question. Do we think we're repeating history? No, it's not that. No, we're not repeating history because we're mining what is already there. What they're doing is they are going back and they are mining and expanding on what's going on, what's already broke ground before. You gotta understand Alan Moore, in the 80s, it's funny, I have an Alan Moore comic book here and stuff. Alan Moore came on, and Jeff Johns has always been a fan of Alan Moore. Your whole Blackest Night from years ago came from an Alan Moore story in a Tales of the Green Lantern Corps special, like a little 8-page story and stuff, right? And now he's going back and he's bringing in the Watchmen and mining in the Watchmen. And going by Alan Moore's own rules of what he said to justify what he was doing with League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, he said that he doesn't go back and change and uh-oh. Oh, hope we don't have to cut this short. I'm getting messages and stuff. But Alan Moore said that he doesn't go back and change and rewrite the characters of the Victorian era of, if you read League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, he pulls. Depends how you judge it. Every era has the classic, but you can judge it by the monthly output too. Oh yeah, man. But Alan Moore said justifies what he does with those characters that he didn't create by saying he moves them forward. And from the 6 pages of the Doomsday Clock that I saw, he's moving the story forward. It's now 1992 or 94 or something. Where I don't believe Rorschach is Rorschach. I believe that's Ozymandias or somebody else in that costume. And things like that. He's done just enough to make me interested. There was a little cringe I cringed a little bit on some of the journal that I read where he said the maggots and the cockroaches will be left fighting. I was like, that's trying to be more, and that's the only critique I have. But no, I don't think we're repeating history yet. I think we're actually in a place where I think I think we're in a place where it's finally a little bit unpredictable, a little bit, because wow. I'll be interested. I've said it before. I'll be interested to see how people look back at the era we're in. But no, I think we've scraped the bottom of the barrel of everything that they can mine again to have the big hit and pulling some readers and some money and stuff and satisfy everybody. So I'm looking forward to Doomsday Clock, and I am going to be objective about it. Like, I feel pretty good about it. It's going to be interesting, and if I get 4 or 5 issues into that thing, and if I get 4 or 5 issues into that shit, I'll call it, what it is. Hey, all right, Rob Rip is here. Cool, man. Is there any classic well-loved story you can't stand? Is there any overrated story? I'm sure there is. Wait a minute. In my head, canon, the reason Gotham is so screwed up is because of his Ozymandias ground zeroed. Okay, I got you. I can't read all that. Is there some work that I think is overrated and stuff? Now, off the top of my head, you understand I've read a lot of books, and this may be, may not be what you're looking for, you know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. But Mark Waid came out in the early 2000s with something everybody seemed to love at the time, and it was Superman Birthright. And I thought it was complete and total garbage. Superman Birthright was sort of another updated version of Superman and Superman's origin and the Kryptonians and character designs for Krypton and stuff like that. It was the first thing that Mark Waid had ever written that I'd read like since his Flash stuff. I probably noticed him as a writer at least for 10 years maybe at that time, and I thought it was absolute garbage. I made no bones about it. But is there something else? And basically any events from Marvel from Civil War on, they're undone and forgotten, and by the next time the next event comes on, I don't know anybody really. I think Civil War may be overrated. And when you go back and look at Civil War, it's either been mined to death or everything's been undone that it accomplished. So I'll go with Civil War. And so just to show you some of the art, getting back here on track here with the history of the DC Universe, there was 2 issues, and they were rewriting. Oh, okay. Excited for Doomsday Clock and what comes after. Speaking of more, did you hear Tom Strong returned to Terrifics by DC in February? Yes, and I have a friend very upset about it. And for some reason, I'm not upset about it. Pulling Tom Strong. I want to see what they're doing with it. This Terrifics book, I've already pre-ordered it. I'm on board. It's DC filling the void and having some fun with the Fantastic Four being gone. I mean, how can you have a Marvel Universe without the team that started it? You know what I'm saying? So the Terrifics are going to be coming in. I think that's going to be a fun book. Oh, no. Tom Strong is a really good book if you go back and read it, man. It has pulp roots. If you like Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff and Doc Savage stuff and things like that, you'll love Tom Strong. But if you don't know the source material, oh, I know, I got you, man, I got you. But if you don't know the source of Tom Strong or what the pulps they're pulling from and the tone of the books and how things are structured and stuff like that, I can get not liking it. But I'm fine with Tom Strong coming in, so I'm trying to say. Now, if they mishandle it, again, I'll call it out. I'll be objective, but I'm not going in ready to attack it. I've seen too many things get pulled in and just disappear. I'm still upset about the Milestone characters years ago being brought in proper into the DC Universe or something like that, somewhere on the line. And why do I not know exactly what they did? Because it just disappeared. You know what I mean? I've seen too many things mishandled. And this is an Alan Moore property, so if there's anything they don't do is make it disappear. You follow what I'm saying when it comes to Alan Moore? Okay, so this right here, we get a lot of prose, and we have a lot of stuff. Okay, I'm excited as hell for it. Tom Strong was one of my fave comics. I need some Fantastic Four's adventure back. I'm curious to see what they'll do with the Strong characters. I am too, Dr. Silver Age, and I'm wondering if they're really going to set Tom Strong in the DC Universe proper. That's what I'm waiting on. They're bringing in Tom Strong. I haven't seen anything that convinced me he's part of the DC Universe. I can see them getting stranded here. I can see him coming across us, with the Tom Strong adventures. I mean, they had a Tila Strong one-shot where she got on like a hoverboard and went through dimensions. Right, yeah. So, yeah, we'll see what they do with it. Exactly, right. Yeah, I think they can do anything they want as long as it's a good story, I think, here. But this is when George Perez, I've seen, when this came out, keep asking questions, guys. It's cool, man. So, Hope he's from another Earth in the multiverse. Remember the Ultraverse when Marvel ever used them and stuff? Yeah, see, anything talking about Marvel that's kind of come up when you bring up like that, there's a dirty side to it, right? The legal department is what we'll call it at Marvel was dirty. Okay, Marvel would either buy up the competition that was rising up, or they would find ways to put them out of business. Defiant Comics is what followed Valiant Comics by Jim Shooter. So they sued Jim Shooter, and they knew they didn't have a case. Jim Shooter and Defiant Comics won the case that Marvel brought against them, but they spent all their funds in court and had to close shop. Ultraverse, Malibu Comics and Ultraverse was on the rise and stuff, and they said they were buying out them because they wanted their coloring, the digital coloring they were doing and all this stuff like that. And then they buried those characters after they got them. Ultraverse was, okay, first you had Image that Malibu put out, and that was the artist putting out and building universes, right? Well, when they picked up after Image took off from Malibu, all these writers came in: Steve Englehart, Jared Jones, Lynn Kaminsky, Steve Gerber, and all these guys. And the writers were doing world building. Got a bad connection. The writers were doing world building, and that's why I thought the Ultraverse was fantastic, man. It was nothing crossed over. They even brought in Mike W. Barr. You know what I mean? He did Mantra. I mean, these were like some good writers that came in there and they did some stuff, and then they started getting, they had a little bit of momentum, man. So I hate that Marvel put them up, man, but there's just some fun stuff. I mean, just some fun stuff in there. The Strangers is a highly underrated book. I mean, if you like the problem with all those books is you can go back and see where they came from. Prototype was Iron Man. Strangers was sort of like the Avengers when you had Hawkman and Captain America button heads in a way, that era. Steve Englehart era, I think. Stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, but they did their own thing with it. Oh my God, what was his name? You had oh my God, how can I be going blank on his name? They had a character who was basically Shazam, but it was like this gooey goop stuff that would cover this kid to make him look all, it left a husk behind when he would crawl out of the body. You know what I mean? Oh my God, why can I not remember his name? Anyway, but I really want to show some of this art in here. This blew me away with what Perez was doing. I've seen Perez's sequential art, and I saw some, Prime. Yes, Prime. Thanks, guys. Thank you. God, that was going to kill me. As soon as I was off this chat, I was going to be digging in a box. So anyway, but this was the first time I got to see George Perez get all stylized and stuff, right? With what he was doing, man. We had these little blurbs. He's doing these characters, and Marv Wolfman would only have so much room to write in there. All these characters are going. Now, of course, this is the early years before we get big time into the superheroes, going through the 40s and stuff, right? So you just go through here and you just have these fantastic, pictures. Hey, what's up, Detective 29, right? Just some of Perez's fantastic stuff, and I got to be careful here because I'll get lost in this stuff. This is just great stuff. And look at this. Perez does on an homage of Sergeant Rock, Joe Kubert style, So we go up into World War II here and stuff, right? Just all these fantastic pieces of art in here with these characters where he can make them shine. And the superhero stuff he did's even better, Yeah, got to put that down or I'm going to get lost in here. And then one thing I think people need to, I recommend people kind of checking out if you can find it. This is real simple and stuff, is Beyond Zero Hour, right? If you get nostalgic for the 90s like everybody's doing, and that's why I'm glad people were asking me questions about the 90s. Hold on, I got a bad connection. Y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me? I think I'm back. Can y'all hear me? Yep, cool, man. Thanks, guys. All right, and we get into Zero Hour in this book right here. But after they did Zero Hour, in the 90s, it was their event book where Zero Hour was the crisis in time. It was saying during the crisis of Infinite Earths, we fixed space, but we didn't fix time. I wish Marvel would do a history book like this. Their timeline is a mess. Yeah. The thing about Marvel is right now, I've said it before, their greatest enemy is their past, the success of their past, and how they made the rules, and they were the first. When I say the rules, it's because they were the people who brought continuity to comics and stuff, right? Every time I talk about Marvel, people drop off. That's why I stay off of it. Yeah, Beyond Zero Hour is a great book. You can usually find it in $1 or less boxes. Absolutely, you can get this stuff, right? But Marvel's become irrelevant, and they have blown up their continuity that they spent, you know, four or five decades building, you know. So anyway, but Zero Hours, where they came in, and it was a story of crisis, pretty much a crisis in time. They crisis on Infinite Earth had happened, and then there a couple years later, they were saying, you know, we had the big reveal on who the bad guy was, and that shocked and made a lot of people mad and stuff. So this book will kind of like go through there and explain the history and go through there what's, you know, just kind of give you an update. You know, this was a companion book. Talks about villains and kind of like where the Marvel Universe, DC, wherever it was. Yeah, when Tony Stark fused with his young self, that would have been a story I'd had no problem with if they could have pulled it off. But we go through some of the characters in the Zero Hour books. You know, it's just kind of a fun book. With this Flash, Green Arrow, it talks about the books, the Rebels, Primal Force books that are coming out, and the new books that were coming out. It kind of showed you some of the books that were going to be coming out after Zero Hour, and that's where I got my first look at Starman by Tony Harris and James Robinson. And if you've watched my channel over the years, you know that's one of my favorite series right there beside a Commandy. So yeah, good stuff, man. So it's just a fun little cheap book that will like give you a little bit of history and kind of makes you nostalgic for the 90s, let you know where things were from the 90s. That's a show. Very bad. Also, so I'm a few minutes here waiting on some questions if you have them. But I'm getting some red bars here. Great internet. Get my computer back. So basically, I'm any other you want to talk about in the future, or if you have questions now or anything. You know, this bad connection is really getting on my nerves, in and out. Thanks for everybody that's hung out. I just got disconnected. So we'll call right here. All right. Everybody that hung in there, good to see you. Might do another one here in a few hours, man, if you guys want it to make up for this. Later, guys.